Day 4 at the NFL Combine. Spencer German with you here in Indianapolis. Anthony Moeglin back on the home front in Cleveland, ready to talk about everything that unfolded at the Combine today. We appreciate you jumping on in with us with the Cleveland Browns on SI at the YouTube channel, where we encourage you to subscribe, comment, like, whatever you need to do. And also over at Cleveland Browns on SI, the website, or si.com/NFL/Browns. Got it right today, Megs. That's all that matters. I got a little more sleep last night, so
a little more sleep, more energy. You're thinking Browns instead of Cavs. It's all good. You want to talk to me, not spin. I get it.
Exactly. By the end of the day tomorrow, I might be saying Cavs again. We'll see. But despite today being a more low-key day, I think on my front in terms of content, it was a pretty eventful day, sort of behind the scenes. Starting with the fact that, again, you wake up another day in the offseason, and the Myles Garrett storyline has taken another turn. The Myles Garrett storyline is at the forefront of everybody's mind. Last night, I think right after we were doing, or no, we might have brought it up on the stand up we were doing, but Mary Kay Cabot had reported that the Browns were willing or are willing to go give Myles Garrett an extension that would make him the highest paid defensive player in the league, or the highest paid, defensive player in the league. $40 million a year was reportedly the offer that they're willing to go to. But today, the new sort of twist in this story is that apparently Myles reps don't want to even talk to Andrew Berry about an extension. They basically, the wording was, slam the door on that idea. And so, Megs, this is where things really get interesting, because I talked about it a little bit, but this isn't a situation where somebody just wants the money. He's made it clear it's not about the money. And so, how do you resolve a situation where a player is unhappy but your contract negotiations aren't going to be the thing that gets him back on board?
And to even add to that, trading him doesn't solve anything for the Cleveland Browns. It digs them in such a big hole. Not even from the player.
The only thing I guess it does solve is you get more draft picks. You get a ticket to rebuild your team quickly, or more quickly. But yes, you're right. It doesn't solve anything in the now.
No, and it makes it harder because of the dead cap situation. I think that is more significant, in my opinion, than anything else involved with the trade, because it really sacrifices your entire year. Because if you take that dead cap situation out of it, you make a deal tomorrow for 3 first-round picks and you start the whole rebuild process. But because of that, I think that plays a really huge factor. And yeah, it sucks, because this is going to get nasty before there's a resolution. And the unfortunate part is that Myles doesn't really have much leverage in this, right? He's got 2 more years left on the contract. They can tag him twice. So he really doesn't have, it's not like the only leverage he can pull, the only thing he can do is sit out. And that is the part that scares you, because it's all right, if it gets to that point, will he sit out? And if he does sit out, at what point do you just kind of, you have to cut bait, because then you're holding him hostage, and then it's just nasty.
It gets ugly. Yeah. And you bring up the word leverage. I think that's a key word here, because I was kind of thinking, when if the Browns were going to offer a contract extension, why would Myles Garrett take that? If his point is, I want out because I want to go to a contender right now when I'm still under 30 and I'm not in the limelight of my career and the wheels are falling off, why would he give the Browns more leverage? Why would he give them more years to control his future that he clearly wants to control himself? So that never really made sense to me. And to your point, the only option for him now seems to be just continue to stand firm. I already kind of assumed he was going to miss, OTAs and involuntary stuff. I'm assuming he'll miss veteran minicamp. Training camp's a different story, though. Would Myles Garrett sit out an entire season? That's, I think, the big question that you get into when you start thinking that far ahead is would he sit out all of training camp? Would he sit out an entire season and waste another year of his prime? That's where things get interesting. So the standoff continues. I don't know quite yet how it gets resolved, other than maybe Myles Garrett getting traded at some point. But both sides seem pretty firm in their convictions of what they want to do.
Spence, in your experience this week, walking around town, hearing things, being around people, what are people saying about it? Because obviously you and I talk every day. We're in the Browns world.
Yeah.
Hey, this is horrible. What are you hearing, if anything at all, from maybe those around the league?
Yeah, so I will tell you, it's a lot of people asking me what I think is going to happen, since I cover the team more regularly, and I give my stance on it and sort of say I think a lot of this is saving face by Andrew Berry. He knows he's associated with the worst trade in NFL history. He can't possibly now trade the second best player in franchise history. But there's been plenty of teams who've said Yeah, I know they're getting calls. There are plenty of people who have said they know they're getting calls. I actually had a conversation with a guy I used to work with in Buffalo who mentioned, he's sort of putting in Brandon Beane's ear the idea of like, hey, you're gonna play some golf with Andrew Barry, and he was like, I don't even know if Andrew Barry plays golf, and but he did. He kind of threw in this side comment about like, but hey, listen, we did just make a trade with each other for Amari Cooper, so we definitely know each other, and it was like,
I have a
oh,
trade. I have a trade thought for that one.
okay.
Josh Allen for Myles, straight up. Then you got yourself a
Never
deal.
gonna happen. That would never happen in a million years.
It's the only
I
way.
mean, I guess a Myles Garrett and like 10 first round picks, maybe. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. No, yeah, listen, like the Bills I think are part of this conversation. I think there's some other teams that obviously have gotten involved and make some sense, but the Browns obviously hold all the cards here in terms of being ready to trade him. I almost wonder if this comes full circle where it's like you just get something done in the now, like give him some guaranteed money on his current deal to get him to show up. And maybe there's some simpatico way of going about this where you're like, hey, show up next year. Let's see how the season goes or starts. And if we're like 1-6 by the trade deadline, okay, then we'll trade you. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Still a lot to play out, but obviously this is that next step that I was alluding to because I'm fascinated to see what happens from here when you have a player that is not about the money. Usually it's about the money, but it's not about the money. How could you possibly resolve this thing? And it's one of the world's greatest mysteries right now how they will. The Browns seem to think they can. I have my doubts, but we'll see how that kind of unfolds. We'll go from Myles to a player that could potentially replace Myles Garrett if he were to get traded, Abdul Carter, who has been linked to the Browns obviously throughout this entire offseason process, leading up to the draft here at the Combine as well. And we knew about the shoulder injury he was dealing with, but last night, literally after we finished up our stand up last night, the news broke that he was found to have a stress fracture in his foot, a very small one, and that he might need surgery. This morning, it was then followed a follow up report shared that he's not going to go with the surgery. He doesn't need to do it. He's experiencing no pain, so he's still going to work out at his pro day and all these different things for scouts. And so a little less concerning in that regard. But I'm going to be honest, Megs. This is an alarming thing if you're the Browns because the Browns have to get these picks right. They have to hit on players that are reliable, that don't have a lot of risk with them, that are going to be ready to play for you and don't have off the field issues. All those things have to be true. Like they have to get players that are good, that can start for you immediately and contribute to this team. Abdul Carter would be that in a perfect world. But I don't know if I feel great about drafting a guy at number 2 who potentially has this lingering foot issue that could become something more.
And that's the exact point you made there is that they have to go now. Like these aren't guys that you can rely on to develop and be great in a year after his foot heals or can develop into something. Like all of these players for Andrew Barry, for Kevin Stefanski have to hit now or they're back, looking for jobs next year. So I agree with you, man. I think that it certainly at number 2 takes Abdul Carter out of the question for the Browns. And yeah, maybe the conversation is if you really want him that bad, if you're in love with him, you can go trade back and get him at some point. But, I think that at number 2, this injury takes him out of the question.
Well, and I want to be clear because there is some precedent for this. Julio Jones had the very same sort of thing, like this stress fracture in his foot at the Combine when he was coming out in 2011. He had the surgery. He started that season, didn't miss any time with his first season, had a really good rookie year. He finished with just under 1,000 yards, bunch of touchdowns, whatever. And it was like the start of the great Julio Jones. But 2 years later in 2013, because this surgery involves putting a screw in your foot, the screw like broke. And so he had to have the surgery again with a bigger screw. I don't think it became, from what I understand, I don't think that specific issue, he had other injury issues, but that one specifically didn't bother him the rest of his career. So it wasn't a non-issue after that. But again, you're talking about like sacrificing potentially a year of a player down the line. You're talking about a surgery at some point, something that could linger. And also you're talking about like, that's Julio Jones. Julio Jones was a freak. And I'm not saying Abdul Carter isn't a freak athlete in his own right, but like everybody's body's different. Everybody responds to things differently. We don't know how, if he has to get the surgery at some point, it could impact his body, impact his career, whatever. So again, I just think there's too much risk with taking a player like that too. If you trade back to 6 and you get him, fine. The value's there. I think he still is going to the top 10. He might even still go in the top 5. But I just think for the Browns, like they're in a position where they really need players right now that can contribute without any risks or issues. And Abdul Carter now kind of has a big red flag.
And I think for Abdul Carter, the person, like, yeah, we look back at Julio Jones and you're like, yeah, freaking dude was amazing. But what happens if his career went differently? And you feel bad for Abdul because this is a big deal, right? He's gonna fall in the draft a little bit, and you never know how or what the end result is going to be. This is truly a sliding doors moment for him. That if it wasn't fractured, or had he known about it or got surgery on it, and it wasn't a surprise, like this is going to be a little bit of a surprise. And yeah, I think we're living in the moment here. Like the draft is still 2 months away, and he's going to have time to really show everybody that he still can go. But he's got a fractured foot. Like that's a big deal, and it's going to require some work on it. And you hope that he's good enough to go. But one of the things that's going to get lost in this, Spence, is that these college kids this year especially are coming off a year unlike any other college kid has ever had in history. And especially Abdul Carter played 3 extra games than he typically would. And that offseason got shrunk way down. Think about all the Ohio State guys you've been seeing this week. Like they had a month off. Like 4 weeks ago, they had just won a national championship. They're probably still partying from after that, and now they're at the NFL Combine. And this just goes right into the whole season. They talk about that rookie wall that these guys hit later in that year. And Abdul Carter, for him, I kind of went off on a little tangent here, but it's a big deal for him. You feel bad for him, but you hope that in the long run it can all get itself sorted out, and it'll certainly impact the way the Browns look at him.
I still think there's a chance he goes top 5. Definitely top 10. He says he's still going to go number 1 overall. I don't know if I buy that, but we'll see.
And I think that opens the door for like a real contender to go jump in. Like, let's say he drops to 7 or 8. What's stopping the Baltimore Ravens from throwing a package together with, I'm just throwing the Ravens out there for an example, but he starts dropping a little bit. You never know what that entices.
That's very true.
To go do.
It's very true. Well, he thinks he's going number 1 overall, but there's another player that could go number 1 overall as well, and his name is Travis Hunter. One of the most unique players to ever come out of enter the draft. One of the most unique players to enter the NFL, and certainly the most unique player in this draft class, I think, overall. And that's Travis Hunter, who obviously is touted for being able to play both ways. And what I think is interesting, Megs, is like everyone has like an opinion on like which one he should do more. And the NFL generally has been like, you got to pick a position. You can't do multiple things. Or like a guy that comes out that was a quarterback that maybe wasn't a great quarterback. They're like, you got to play receiver. We saw that with Lamar Jackson, obviously, back in the day. So like, there's always like a specification thing when it comes to the NFL. I don't know if that matters with Travis Hunter. Like, I do think Travis Hunter has the ability to be a Shohei Ohtani like transcendent player in the league who can actually do this if he really wants to. But it's also the NFL. It's grueling. You're taking a lot of hits. There's no way a team wants to sign up for him getting hit on any play on both sides of the ball every single game. And I don't know how long that would be sustainable for his career. So I think, to me, I think he could do it. I think every team would draft him with the intention of like, we're going to use him a little bit on both sides of the ball, but maybe more so on this side of the ball. And I think that's probably what you should do. But I think it's fascinating that like he was pretty adamant. I want to play both sides if they give me the choice. But he also did say he's open to choosing one if they're gonna not choosing one, but if he's asked to do just one, he will do just one.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a great case study, and seeing how this works out over the next 2, 3, 4 years is going to be really interesting, because I think early on, I agree with you that it's something that he can do. But I also think that, he's no longer playing against college kids, right? Every guy he's going to be playing against, whether it's when he's on the offense side of the ball or the defense side of the ball, is a professional at that side. Like, I'm sure and this is probably unfair of me to say, but I bet there's 10 cornerbacks in the NFL right now who could flip over and play receiver. And that's not to say that's not great by Travis Hunter, but I think in the NFL, you gotta, in my opinion, you gotta focus on one and become great at one. And I thought what Andrew Berry said the other day on day 1 of the combine was like, yeah, his superpower is his ball skills. That's how we would view him. He gets the opportunity to use his superpower 100 times at a year while the ball is intended to go to him, or maybe 20, maybe 30 times when the ball's not intended to go to him.
Right.
And to make plays on it. And I thought that part was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. And I wanted to go there next because, the Browns sort of saying that they view him as a wide receiver is important. Like, and he mentioned that there was teams he met with that some said, we view as a wide receiver. There was others who said they view him as a DB. I do think like the general consensus from just the combine in general is that he would be like, he's wide receiver 1, even though he does play both ways. Like people think he's even better than Tet is going to be. So like there is a consensus that he's that good of an athlete. And so that matters in terms of the Browns if they were to draft him or if he's there and they're deciding to draft him. They would put him in that. They wouldn't put him in that box. That's not the right way to word it, but they would primarily want to use him as a wide receiver. But I do think, because Kevin Stefanski said it yesterday, any team that drafts him probably goes into it understanding like we're going to use him both ways in some capacity. I kind of think it's easy to do that if they're a DB, if he's a DB, because you can create a whole package built around Travis Hunter on offense. But it's not to say you can't rotate him in on defense if you need to, if he's a receiver first.
And I heard this a few weeks ago. I forget who said it. It may have been Orlovsky or somebody on ESPN had mentioned like to your exact point right there. Like there's ways that you can filter him in on offense. Maybe it was Herbstreit, but there's ways you can filter him in on offense where he's not taking a ton of hits, right? You put him in the slot, you put him in as a number 3 receiver. He comes in periodically. He's not the 1 or 2 receiver. He's your number 3. So you can get him in there. He can have those electric plays. He can make the big play, and then he can focus on every down playing cornerback to do that. I don't know. The good part is whoever does get him, if it is Cleveland, I don't think that there is a wrong answer. I think that whatever way you go with it, I think you're going to get a guy who can be a star in this league for a long time.
2 other notes from his press conference. One, had the biggest media scrum of anybody so far this week, rightfully so. He's a star in the making. Actually, I guess 3 things. He also mentioned Jerry Jeudy's name as somebody that he kind of emulated his game after. He used to watch a lot of Jerry Jeudy highlights because they're both from Florida. And that was the only player he really even mentioned when it came to like comps or guys you look up to. It was only Jerry Jeudy. So just envision a world where Jerry Jeudy and Travis Hunter are lining up with each other. The third thing I was going to say, though, is I thought it was interesting. You get so many of the sort of like the goofy, have you met with this team questions? Yeah. And he turned down every single one of those. He was like, next question, next question, next question. He was not answering any of them, didn't give anything away in terms of the teams he's talked to. So I found that kind of interesting as well. That brings us to a couple final things we're going to get into. Defensive linemen working out over in Lucas Oil Stadium today, really as we speak, but obviously throughout the afternoon as well. Anthony, I don't know if there was anything that stood out from you on the home front. I can talk about a few things that I noticed, but this is a group that we know is so deep. I also think it's interesting, like nowadays it feels like more rare that guys actually do the workouts versus like not. Like there's been so many reports of like this guy's not working out, this guy's not working out. You almost are more shocked when you find out somebody is working out.
So that's funny you go there because that's where I was going to go. My takeaway from back home, and just so everybody knows, like I'm not dialed in on NFL Network.
You're not watching the underwear Olympics on your TV?
Yeah, I did not have didn't have it on. But they that's what my takeaway was. Like feels like there's a lot of guys backing out of it, and I saw somebody tweet like in 10 years, this is just going to be like an interview, and it's going to be no workouts. Yeah. Everyone's going to say it for the pro day. I'm not here to get into that conversation. What I am here to say is that it's always cool. I always thought, as a kid growing up, you always wanted to be running the 40 and doing the bench press and doing all that stuff. Really cool to see these guys getting out there and showcasing their stuff. Ultimately, I think it's all like none of it's like real football movement. Like there's never going to be a defensive lineman running 40 yards downfield unless he's chasing a touchdown. Or
how many times have we seen? How many times have we seen like wide receivers run like 4.4s and then like they stink? Like it's not a good indicator. The tape is the bottom line, but that stuff adds some extra context. It gives you some insight into like what they might be doing. And I'll say this: like we talk about this being a really deep group. Somebody like Shamar Stewart helped his stock. I mean, he's already a guy that's probably going first round, maybe even top 10 already. But he ran a sub 4 640. He was like 4.57, I think he was. He was 4.59 his second attempt, I think. And he had some really good measurables and like the broad jump, the vertical jump. So he was great. James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. He had a really good 40 time, the best of the whole group. He ran a 4.47, which is like, for a defensive lineman, it's like, whoa, like that's pretty fast. He didn't have quite as good measurables on some of the other drills. The broad jump, the vertical jump, his vertical was actually kind of low, but you can tell like he's a freak athlete that can do some different things. So, like some of these guys, flashed a little bit, and again, it's context of the story, but the big picture is obviously what the tape says.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Do love seeing those guys getting out there and doing it, and trying to make their way. I know you got to see it live today. Was this your first time? I know you were at the combine last year.
No, I went in. I saw the defensive lineman last year too, because I was here. I left on this day last year, but I stayed a little bit. I think I went over to Lucas Oil and watched for a little bit. I think we did a stand up and then I left, something like that. I left earlier in the day, but I saw a little bit of it.
Do you have your stopwatch in the stands?
No, I don't do all that. You know how I treat the workouts? I treat it kind of like when you're at home and you're working on something and you turn the TV on and you just want like, you want like an easy thing to consume, like an easy thing to take in, Curb Your Enthusiasm, like a nice, easy sitcom that you can just kind of like laugh at every now and then, catch the bits and pieces, but you don't have to like follow really intently. That's how I treat the combine. I sit in the stands, I work a little bit, I get some stuff done, and I kind of look up every now and then to like see what somebody's doing and, make mental notes. That's about it. I'm not that intense about it.
So
I just like being in Lucas. Honestly, I just like being in Lucas Oil Stadium.
Well, I saw you.
By the way, top 5 stadium in the NFL. Boom.
You tweeted it. You posted it. And
it's a fantastic venue. If you've never been here, you have to come to Lucas Oil Stadium. It's awesome.
I've never been here. I'm gonna come back to that in 1 second. The other question I had was like, are people still like oohing and ahhing like if when these guys run?
Yeah. When James Pierce Jr. ran the 4.5 or the 4.47. People were like, oh, like there was like a noise over the crowd. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
That's cool. That's really cool. All right, back to Lucas Oil. What makes it top 5? One thing about
dude, it's just so unique. Like the brick outside, inside there's like just this really cool architecture. The fact that the roof opens up, like it feels very big in there. Yeah. Like it holds a good crowd. I'm sure the noise level is great. I've never been here for a game, but it's just a really really cool venue. Like they did this thing right. They did this thing well. I hope that the Browns take some notes when they build their dome, to do some similar sort of stuff because it's just a cool space, man. Like, right. I just think it's awesome, and everybody agrees. Everybody I talked to is like, yeah, dude, this stadium's awesome. So, it's a take that is gonna be a little hot for some people, but pretty standard, I think, because people would tend to agree. All right, we'll get out of here with this real quick. The salary cap officially announced today. We knew there was like a range it was going to be between, but it comes in at 279.2. 279.2, which obviously, Mags, is good news for the Browns in the grand scheme of things. I'll just lay out the numbers here really, really quick, and then you can sort of give some final thoughts. Browns, with the rule of 51, which basically says like you can have 51, their top 51 contracts count against the cap during the offseason. I want to say they're at like 304 million, somewhere around there. So obviously that's over the regular salary cap, but you throw in the fact that they have rollover cap, which is money that they didn't use on the cap last year, created by all those void years they have. And so they had 40 million in rollover cap. So that means their salary cap for next year is actually not 279.2. It's like 319.2 or something like that. So then you have to throw in the dead money that they have to eat. And you're talking about being like $20 million over the salary cap, give or take. This is all kind of estimations here. I don't mean to bore you with math and numbers, but that's kind of the gist of it. That's a figure that I'm sure Andrew Berry will figure out how to get underneath once again, because he always does.
Yeah, up 24 million from last year, which was up 31 million from the year before, which was up 16 million the year after that. So you can sense a trend. It's going up and up and up. So what that leads,
which is the reason they do these things. Like that's the reason they do the void years. I'm not saying it's great. It's great practice because at some point that bill comes due and you got to pay it. And there's going to be some year down the line where like the Browns season is going to be a complete, like utter, just like, hey, we're just eating all this money and the team's going to stink for a year. And so fans won't enjoy that. But for now, like I get the concept of like you push it down the line because it makes up less % of the salary cap the next year because the cap's always going up.
Yeah, and they're going to continue to do it. Whether you like it or not, you're going to see it. The guys who want to be here, who have big contracts, will continue to do this type of stuff, like you said, until they got to pay the piper at some point. But, good for the Browns, and the NFL continues to grow. It's never going to stop.
And for what it's worth, it can work because the Eagles have more void money, more money tied up in void years than any team in football. And they just won the Super Bowl. The difference is they knew how to build a Super Bowl caliber roster. That's kind of important.
Before we get out of here, before you get to closing, Starbucks today or no?
I did not go to Starbucks today. I don't drink coffee, so I'm never apparently going to see any fights between media members at the local Starbucks because I'll just never be there.
Throwing hands.
Although it would have been fun to like post up in the corner with like a newspaper up just to like peek around and see if anything was going to be happening.
What a wild story that was.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild. The fact that it became a story shared on Pro Football Talk is kind of interesting too. I can't say I'd be writing a story on my website about that. But anyway, speaking of our website, you can find plenty of Browns content over with the Cleveland Browns on SI page or si.com/NFL/Browns. There's a bunch of stuff up there. Nick Chubb had a cryptic post today. You can see what that was all about. the Myles Garrett stuff, some other things that happened and unfolded today, including with Travis Hunter. So I encourage you to go over there. I also encourage you to hang out at the Cleveland Browns NSI YouTube channel, where many of you might be watching this right now, and find more of our content. Andrew Berry from this week, some of the prospects from this week, Travis Hunter's full pressers up there as well. So there's all kinds of stuff from the combine and other stuff from just the season, the off season, more. Keep on following along with us. Keep on watching, and we encourage you, obviously, to subscribe to the channel as well. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. One more day at the combine tomorrow. We'll recap everything that unfolds. The quarterbacks speak tomorrow, so it's going to be a really, really big day. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep on following along, as always, with the Cleveland Browns on SI.